So I don't know about you guys, but personally I am sick and tired of spending hundreds, if not thousands of pounds on graphics cards. I think AMD and Nvidia are charging far too much. And so enough is enough. It's time to go the opposite direction. And so that's why I purchased a graphics card for just 40 pence. And so today we're going to see what sort of games you can play with this card, how it performs in games, and what sort of FPS you might be able to expect to get. Just taking a look at this card, we can see that it definitely looks dated, and in comparison to more modern cards, well, it certainly doesn't exactly look high-end. On the back, we're not exactly going to be seeing any HDMI ports either. Instead, you'll see two DVI ports and S-Video. I'll obviously be using DVI for our testing today with a DVI to HDMI adapter. And so the Nvidia NX 8600 GT by MSI clearly hasn't held its aesthetics very well. But I suppose that's because it was released in a time when gaming PCs looked like this. And, well, I looked like this. Now, I'm not exactly saying that I'm old now, but I like to think that I've learned a thing or two in that time. One of them being that you get what you pay for. But let's all just assume for a second that I haven't learned that. And so what games can you really play on a graphics card that when originally reviewed was described as decent at mid-range? It's probably safe to say the card hasn't gotten any better since. The technical details of this aren't exactly going in this card's favour either. For starters, we're talking about a card that's old enough to be using PCIe Gen 1, when we've recently started to use PCIe Gen 4. However, we do have 289 million transistors, and, well guys, 289 million, that's a lot, right? Well, sure. Until you consider the fact that even the GT 1030 that I checked out the other day has 1.8 billion of them. So with the NX 8600 GT loading all 32 of its CUDA cores and 256 megabytes of GDDR3 memory into its backpack, how well will it perform when I pair it with my own personal gaming system using a Ryzen 5 3600 and 32GB of RAM? Obviously, you'll be giving up a lot with this card, considering it doesn't even cost £1. You won't be getting your usual creature comforts that owning an Nvidia card would grant you. Game optimization isn't available, neither is Nvidia Game Stream. You also won't be getting any use of Nvidia's in-game overlay. And come on, did you really think that this would have Nvidia Freestyle and Ancel support? Not a chance. Now that's an awful lot of things that you can't do on this card. But what are some things that this card is good for? Well, you guys can go ahead and add video output to a PC that has no built-in graphics. Or perhaps you could watch a lovely 1080p YouTube video just like this one. Or maybe, just maybe, you could do some 1080p gaming. Okay, yeah, so you won't be doing much gaming. But that being said, not all games require DirectX 11. And so what titles can we run, even if they are at low settings? Well, obviously we can be ruling out straight away games such as PUBG, Apex Legends and Fortnite. They all require DirectX versions that this card does not support. Perhaps we can rely on trusty old Minecraft. Of course we can. Now, whilst Minecraft is mostly a CPU-bound game, even with this graphics card, we were able to push strong frame rates with a more than playable experience. Now, Dota 2 isn't particularly demanding either. Perhaps that will run well. And I'll tell you guys what, it's actually a playable experience. At least in my own opinion anyway. You guys may well disagree with that. Now, I've tested Wreckfest on a number of really old graphics cards before, so it should work here too. And whilst the game does open and technically play, the frame rates and the frame times made this game absolutely unplayable for anyone that has functioning eyeballs. Now, if on the other hand you are blind, then do enjoy the relaxing sound of your car responding to all of your inputs just 2 very short seconds after you've made them. Rocket League is yet another title that is well known for running on pretty much any computer. I wonder if that runs. And hey, would you look at that? Sure, we are playing at god-awful settings, but if you pretend for a second that you can actually tell the difference between the ball and the crowd, then I suppose that you might be able to enjoy this experience. Okay, so maybe our luck lies more in esports games. Well, what better game to try than CSGO? Well, the good news is that CSGO actually launches, so we're going to err on the side of caution and reduce all our settings to 720p and pretty much as low as we can graphically go. So as it turns out, even with the lowest settings at 720p, we are still unable to break that 30 FPS average. Something tells me that esports players probably won't be making the switch anytime soon. But guys, don't worry, because we still have one trick left up our sleeves. It's overclocking! So let's crank it up as high as possible. And yeah, okay, oops, maybe not quite that high, that might be a bit too high. But if we turn it down to a mild overclock, we actually see a decent improvement in games. Now, after checking for decent stability by running Unigine Heaven, it was time to retest all of the games. Rocket League improved enough for us to just about be able to push 1080p rather than 720p, which provided us with a much nicer experience, even if it was a tad choppier. Dota 2 is also able to run at 1080p, though, let's be honest, that was to be expected. The other games, well, we didn't really see much of an improvement. So with all that being said and done, why on earth would anyone ever want to buy a card like this? Well, if you're into your retro gaming, then cards like this are just fine. Buying the cheapest of the brand new cards will cost you more, but you still won't necessarily get any extra benefit. For instance, let's assume you want to play GTA 3. Once I'd gone into the settings and enabled compatibility to run the game in Windows 7 mode, we launched just fine, and using max settings at 1080p, I was easily able to push more than 100 FPS. Sure, a GT 1030 could easily do that and more. But if you're not playing on a monitor that can push more than 144Hz, you would never know the difference. And on top of this, unlike many AMD cards from this era, Nvidia has actually kept up driver support. So whilst the latest version for this card was in 2016, I can at least run the graphics card on Windows 10 without having to rely on hacked and modified drivers from the community. And so we're left with a defining question that is, should you buy this card? And the answer is, well, maybe. The obvious answer for the majority of people is no. And let's be honest, that makes sense. This card is designed to play games from the early 2000s, and that's probably what we should have left it doing. So if you guys are retro gamers or you're looking to build a little box for playing older titles, then this card will be a bargain for you. For anything else, well, obviously this card isn't going to be working for you. By the looks of things, Nvidia actually only gave us driver support for this card so that we could watch it die in buttery smooth HD. And so guys, if you did enjoy this video, then please do be sure to hit like and subscribe and leave a comment down below if you want to see more of this sort of content. It's been a while since I last did a graphics card sort of around this price mark sort of review. So if you want to see more of it, then do be sure to let me know, and I will see you all in the next video.